Good Shabbos. This week we are reading from Parshat Vayeshev, which begins in Genesis chapter 37. And we begin the story of Joseph, which we'll be with for a while. It begins as follows: Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz migorei aviv. Jacob dwelt in the land of his father's wanderings in the land of Canaan. And these are the ongoing stories, the sagas, the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers, being still a lad, even with the sons of Bilhah and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought evil report of them to their father. Now Israel, who was Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he had made him a coat of many colors. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. And Joseph dreamt a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him yet even more. And he said to them, "Listen, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamt. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf rose up and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves came round about and bowed down to my sheaf." And his brother said to him, "Shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us?" And they hated him yet even more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamt yet another dream and told it to his brothers, and said, "Behold, I have dreamed yet a dream, and behold, the sun and moon and 11 stars bowed down to me." And he told it to his father and to his brothers, and his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamt? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow down to you to the earth?" And his brothers envied him, and yet his father kept the matter in mind. Dreams. Well, there's a quote attributed to Theodor Herzl, the founder of political Zionism: "Im tirtzu ein zu agada." If you will it, it is no dream. If you will it, it is no dream. Herzl was speaking about the establishment of a Jewish state, some 50 years before the founding of the state of Israel. If you will it, it is no dream. If you desire it enough, you will ultimately make it happen. In this week's Parsha, Joseph has dreams as a youth. As we begin this Joseph story, which we will be following for the next 4 weeks of Torah readings, Joseph has dreams of sheaves of grain, one for each of his brothers bowing down to his sheaf, the sun, moon, and 11 stars, one for each of his brothers bowing down to him. He has many trials and tribulations in his story, during which, however, he always holds on to a sense of who he understands himself to be. And eventually his dream ultimately does come true. Joseph is an example in the Torah of an individual Hebrew man who finds himself isolated in the midst of a non-Hebrew society and somehow finds his way. At the age of 17, perhaps he didn't handle it so well. Perhaps his father favoring one son over all the others didn't handle it so well. But Joseph continues through these trials and tribulations. And as I said, and we will see, he grows. But as I said, he becomes an individual Hebrew isolated in the midst of a non-Hebrew society. And today we may think that that is not at all unusual. Each of us in some ways is an individual Jew finding our way in a non-Jewish society. But that is actually not the norm through most of Jewish history. Through most of Jewish history, we Jews may have been scattered among the nations, but we were not generally scattered as individuals. We were scattered as scattered communities. Jews either chose or were forced to live in separate villages or separate districts, frequently walled in and locked in at night, which assured that we would not be lone Jews in a larger society. Moreover, the laws of the lands that Jews lived in usually locked them out of the larger society as individuals and defined Jews as members of a group who had a highly defined place outside of society in a community that at times would be chartered to rule themselves by their own Jewish law, as long as they stayed in their defined place and paid a set schedule of taxes as a group. Only in the last 200 years did this really start to change in any significant way, which is when Western countries started demanding we take last names, for example, so they could keep track of us. So last names weren't always, by the time of Ellis Island coming to America, last names weren't actually necessarily something people felt so much they needed to hold on to. They were relatively recent. But this change has led, this change of us becoming individuals has led to the situation where we are now, where we are scattered individuals in various countries in the world, and with one larger community defined as a nation state in the land of Israel. This social change has reshaped the nature of what it is to be Jewish. It has changed what it is to be Jewish in the world. It has changed the nature of Jewish community life. It has changed the inner experience of being Jewish for each individual. And this social change has made the festival of Hanukkah even more important. Not only has Hanukkah become more important as a response to Christmas, because it comes as a holiday that we can celebrate at a time when all the rest of the world, it seems, is celebrating a major holiday, and Jewish children want gifts too, like everyone else in their lives is getting. But Hanukkah becomes even more important because part of Hanukkah's meaning is holding on to your own identity precisely at the time when it is hardest to do that in the larger society in which you are a participant. Hanukkah comes as a solution to a problem precisely at the time of year when we need it most in diaspora Jewish life. In Israel, Hanukkah is a celebration of the establishment of what some people call the Third Jewish Commonwealth, Jewish political independence for the third time. The first Commonwealth being the Kingdom of David and the time of the First Temple up until the Babylonian destruction of 586 BCE. The Second Commonwealth being the independence established by the Maccabees at the time of the events of Hanukkah in 165 BCE, the Third Commonwealth being the independence of the State of Israel in 1948. But in the diaspora, Hanukkah comes as a reminder and a celebration of the strength we need as individuals to maintain Jewish life and sustain Jewish community and tradition, and to contribute the light of Jewish teaching to the world around us. And it is this transition in Jewish life, the breakdown of Jewish community and Jewish theology as we entered into the modern world, that led to the teachings of Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan and his oversized influence in the thought and institutions of American Judaism and the founding of Reconstructionist Judaism. Mordechai Kaplan had one foot in the life of 19th century Eastern European Jewish thought and community, and one foot in the social thought and Jewish life of 20th century America. He was able to provide an explanation to American Jews in particular of what they were living through. And he was able to suggest and demonstrate a way that Jewish life could be rebuilt in this very new social and intellectual setting. That, in essence, was the power of his teaching and why he had such a wide influence in the life of the Jewish community. At the core of Kaplan's teaching was the description of Judaism as a civilization. Judaism is the evolving religious civilization of the Jewish people. And just as Christian civilization or Christendom has different cultures and languages, law, art, literature, alphabets, music, religion, symbols, lands, community, and economic structures, calendars, food, and more. And just as the Islamic world has different cultures and languages, law, art, literature, alphabets, music, religion, symbols, land, community, and economic structures, calendar, foods, and more, so too does Jewish civilization have different cultures and languages, law, art, literature, alphabets, music, religion, symbols, lands, community and economic structures, calendar, foods, and more. Except that Jewish civilization has existed in the past 2,000 years, mostly scattered in bubbles around the world spatially. Community here, community here, community here. And they did communicate with each other. They traveled to each other, and they sent letters to each other, and that's where a lot of our writing and legal documents come from also. Responsa. One judge asking how you would rule this, and that letter going from town to town to the expert, and then the answer going from town to town, and like email, all mail was read, so it was all public. The communication was ongoing. In fact, that's how the first Siddur came about. The Jewish community of Spain in the 9th century, I believe, the Jewish community of Spain at the end of the world, asked Jewish scholars in the academies in Baghdad if they would write down their prayers and send it to them so they could be reciting, and that became the first Siddur. But the oral traditions clearly existed before that. We see that in text as well. But Jewish civilization has existed for 2,000 years in bubbles around the Western world in particular. And however, now, entering the modern world, starting 150 years ago, most of those bubbles have burst. And we as individuals are now scattered, often on our own, needing to rebuild Jewish life and community on a voluntary basis, and in that way somehow maintain Jewish civilization. Kaplan described the experience of each American Jew as the experience of living simultaneously in two civilizations. Simultaneously in two civilizations. We live in a Jewish civilization with all of its trappings and an American civilization with all of its trappings. And sometimes they can complement each other, and at best they can learn from each other the best features of each other and complement each other. But at other times they can slap up against each other, especially when the calendars of each civilization conflict against each other. And we suddenly have different holidays or different demands going on, pulling at us because we're living in two calendars. Living in two civilizations simultaneously is a difficult thing. Calling upon each Jewish individual to negotiate this balance of being a full participant in Western civilization and a full participant in Jewish civilization puts a great internal, spiritual, intellectual, and emotional demand upon each individual. It's not easy, and yet it's not a situation we asked for so much. It is where we find ourselves to be. And as such, we really should be talking about it more so that we each could do it better. And we could help each other along the way. In some ways, this internal clash of civilizations is part of what Hanukkah is about. And perhaps that Hanukkah is one time of the year when we should have such discussions. There are definitely some ways in which Kaplan felt that we might go astray in living out these two civilizations simultaneously. One problem he felt we would have is that the American civilization would make such heavy demands upon us that it would crowd out the time and energy we have to participate in Jewish civilization. And that we would then respond by thinning out the role of Jewish civilization and reducing Jewish life to only a thin layer of performing rituals and reciting prayers. He wrote that for each of us, Jewish life, quote, must be abundant and not thin and ghost-like. Abundant and not thin and ghost-like. So one of his cautions is that we would feel so much pressure to participate in American society that we would just make shallow gestures in living Jewish life. But Jewish life, in order to be successful and meaningful, had to be abundant. Had to be active, not thin and ghost-like. It has to be thick. And to achieve this, he wrote, each of us must strive for self-integration. Self-integration. He wrote, the American Jew will not be 50% Jew and 50% American, but 100% of each, having achieved a synthesis in his own personality of whatever is valid in both the Jewish and American civilizations. Mordechai Kaplan envisioned that American Jews should be able to take the best teachings and practices of Jewish civilization and the best teachings and practices of American civilization and draw upon them to be the best full human beings we can be. And he insisted it was kosher to use the teachings of each civilization to critique the other. What conflicts there might be between the two, we should consciously work out within ourselves, and with the goal of being the best full human beings we could be. And as much as possible, we should make a specific effort to participate in Jewish life so as to build and maintain Jewish civilization in our own life and for our own benefit. And we should strive to participate as Jews in American civilization, allowing our American lives to be influenced by our Jewish lives for the benefit of American civilization as well as ourselves. Admittedly, this is a heavy lift, but it is the core of being Jewish, especially if we take seriously the call of the Torah that we are to be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. That is, a people that truly will make a positive difference in the world. This is also a highly internalized process. Each of us as individual Jews is asked to process a lot of material, to synthesize a lot of teachings, and make a lot of heavy decisions within ourselves about how to be Jewish and American, and simply human, in a complex two-civilizational world. And so we probably should be talking about this more. Basic life decisions move into the realm of spiritual direction. Jewish education becomes an issue of spiritual formation. There are a lot of internal theological and psychological dynamics going on within this approach to Jewish life that we have not been discussing enough. Or perhaps we don't know how to discuss it. Hanukkah becomes at least the time to propose the question. It seems appropriate to me that every Hanukkah we are reading in the Torah the story of Joseph. It always works out that way. Joseph, the individual Hebrew and non-Hebrew society, is forced to deal with all of these issues on his own. We see episodes where Joseph, on his own, is forced to make lonely decisions. We see glimpses of his internalized life, where he is working through conflicts within himself, trying to understand his own dreams and others, trying to figure out what is going on and how he should respond. we see him rise from the lowest place in Egyptian society to the highest ranks of Egyptian society. And more importantly, we see him develop and mature as a menschlich human being. Joseph becomes a model of this internalized clash of civilizations, which can be yet another set of lessons we gain from Hanukkah. There are not many figures in the Torah who are individual Hebrews in a non-Hebrew society. The Hanukkah menorah can be a symbol to us of how to go about this internalized process. The Hanukkah menorah brings light into the world, the light of Torah. Traditionally, we put it in a window to pronounce to the outside that a great miracle happened there. My teacher, Rabbi Arthur Green, brings a teaching from Rabbi Yehuda Leib Alter of Ger, the Ger Rebbe, who died in 1900, also known as the Sfat Emet, the language of truth, after the title of some of his writings. And the Sfat Emet taught, on the basis of two verses in the book of Proverbs, that whoever does a mitzvah is like one who lights a candle before the Blessed Holy One and brings light and life to his own soul. For in Proverbs, we read two verses. Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam. The candle of God is the human soul. The human soul is the candle of God. And we read, Ki ner mitzvah v'torah or. For a candle is a mitzvah, or a mitzvah is a candle, and Torah is light. So what is meant by a mitzvah or a commandment is a candle? Anyone who performs a mitzvah is lighting a candle in the face of God. Anyone who performs a mitzvah is lighting a candle before God. And the human soul, their human soul, is that candle before God. And the light is the light of Torah. So when we perform a mitzvah, we are lighting our own soul, and it is in that way that we draw God's presence into the world. Let us remember that each time we do a mitzvah, we are as if we are lighting a menorah and putting it in a window and announcing that a great miracle has happened. That candle is our own soul, and the light that comes through into the world is the light of Torah. Living fully 100% in two civilizations, when one of them is Jewish civilization, means that we strive to bring the light of Torah into everything we do, everything we are. The way we participate in American civilization is an expression of our participation in Jewish civilization. And in order to sustain this partnership of civilizations, we must make sure our participation in American civilization gives way at moments and leaves time and energy for fuller participation in Jewish civilization, for holidays, Shabbat, ritual practice, and Torah study about how to live all aspects of life. We need to leave time, in effect, to set up the menorah in Jewish civilization so that we can light candles on Hanukkah and do mitzvot in American civilization all the rest of the year, so that we can be the brightest candles, the best human beings we can be in Jewish civilization and in American civilization throughout the year. Shabbat Shalom and happy Hanukkah.